Welcome back to Consider This. Melisa and Shaarad here, and we're chatting to Ganesh Kumar Bangah, who is the champion for the ICT Nexus, ICT Productivity Nexus under the Malaysia Productivity Blueprint. So, Ganesh, just before the break, we were talking about incentives, right? The funding-based incentives, lots of that versus application-based. Now, talk to us a little bit about this lack of awareness of the different types of incentives, because SMEs don't really know where to go to get these incentives.
Sure. No, I think the root cause of the not knowing where to go is really not understanding what the incentives are for. Right? So, for example, if an incentive is for Industry 4.0, how many SMEs actually understand what Industry 4.0 is? Or what artificial intelligence
and how
is,
it relates to their business,
and how it
right?
relates to their business, or what RPA is, robotic process automation, right? 80% of SMEs don't even understand these buzzwords.
Right.
And 50% of this team didn't understand that word.
Right? So there's a lot of buzzwords in this industry, and that's kind of the trend in the tech industry, for better or worse, is that we always confuse everybody else by these buzzwords. And because of that, when you have then incentives for digitalization, for AI enablement, for IR 4.0, the lack of awareness is also caused by the lack of understanding.
Sure.
So the source of it is actually lack of understanding of what the incentive is for.
Is the source of it a lack of communication, and that's why there's a lack of understanding?
Part of it, but another source of it is people don't see the real life applications, and that's a bigger. So you can talk about digitalization, as I mentioned earlier, but if you don't see how it relates to your life, you can mention AI 100 times, but you don't see how it can improve your lives.
Is there a question of the cost of adoption of new technologies? You know, you said earlier that everybody recognizes that around the corner things are going to change.
Yes.
And, right? But there must be a real concern about whether they can absorb the cost of the adoption of these technologies, and what will be the returns. I mean, how dramatically improved will their returns be?
Sure, I think that's where the government has come in. They recognize that, look, SMEs can't absorb a lot of this cost up front, which is where the government has come in and provided grants and loans to fund some of these applications, right? And you have a right point that you brought up on ROI. Now, ROI can only be proven if you've already applied it, right? So only once you apply a particular technology or it's been applied to a similar business can you actually see returns. And that's why I keep stressing that application-based incentives are more important than actually funding-based incentives, right? Because if you provide funding-based incentives, that ROI is unproven. But if you provide application-based incentives, there will actually be other applications or other SMEs that have applied that and seen ROI. And if other similar SMEs have seen the ROI, tendencies you would also see the ROI.
Well, you know, I was about to ask about that, whether the incentives are actually the accurate ones, and something you alluded to a bit earlier, because not only, you know, whether they're the right incentives, there are so many different bodies giving out these incentives, right? It feels like almost every other agency or you know, bank or financial institution is providing these types of grants. It feels quite fragmented, and I'm wondering, as a champion of the ICT Productivity Nexus, whether you have a bit of a bird's eye view on that.
We do have a bird's eye view, and to be honest, it's a bit confusing. Just to be totally honest, because we have so many different ministries that actually are involved in the tech industry. Just to give you an idea, of course, the Ministry of Communications and Multimedia is kind of the key driver for a lot of IT initiatives. But then you're the Ministry of Entrepreneurship.
That's right.
That focuses on SMEs and also has a drive on innovation and digitalization through MAGIC.
Yeah, all the agencies under that.
And then you have MESTEC, which is the funding agencies under MESTEC, right? EOB Yin's ministry.
That's right.
And then you have MITI that oversees e-commerce.
Wow.
So you have 4 or 5 ministries that actually oversees this entire industry. So one of the things at least on behalf of PCOM, National Tech Association, we've actually been talking about is having a single tech ministry that can oversee this entire industry. Now,
Are there other governance structures? I mean, other countries which we can emulate? I mean, don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel here.
There are many countries that have started their own tech industries. Some have gone even further to set up AI ministries.
AI ministries.
Right, but we don't need to reach that level. We should at least start with a tech ministry that could have oversight over this entire industry.
So what would a ministry like that be focused on? I mean,
so it would be focused on two things: generating demand and supply. Right. So generating demand means getting the industry, the general industry, to adopt ICT and digitalization, and supply is where generating enough tech companies to actually supply those to the general industry, right? And so that's kind of the focus that the ministry.
I guess I'm wondering, because earlier we said that almost tech touches everything, right? Technology touches almost every industry, and in this day and age, you cannot afford not to be digital savvy. I guess I'm wondering, at the basis of all that lies broadband speed, right? And the cost of broadband. You mentioned the cost of adoption of all this. Malaysia, on the whole, our broadband is still relatively expensive.
Right. So one of the successes we've had in the IT Nexus is to implement, or fully implement today, the mandatory standard on access pricing. So if you notice, over the last 1-2 years, the cost of broadband has gone down substantially.
That's true. That's true.
Especially with since the change of government, I think YB Gobin, the Minister of Communications, has put a push in terms of reducing the cost of broadband.
But what about the speed?
I think both of these, of course, is not an immediate increase. Right? In fact, if you ask me, in the next 2 to 3 years, our problem will not be the speed. Our problem will be the applications for the speed.
What does that mean?
So for example, 5G. When 5G is actually implemented, the biggest issue is not going to be the availability of 5G, but what you use 5G for.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's the basis of all, improving the productivity within the ICT sector. We're going to come back and continue this conversation in just a couple of minutes. Make sure you don't go away. We'll be right back on Consider This.